to IsisParenting's Sleep Support webinar and chat. My name is Nancy Holtzman. I'm a mom and baby nurse educator, board-certified lactation consultant, board-certified in pediatrics, and I'm the Vice President of Clinical Content and E-Learning here at IsisParenting outside of Boston, Massachusetts. And today we are going to speak about nap transitions, so how your baby, roughly between the ages of 6 months to 15 months approximately, will transition from going from 3 naps to 2 naps, and then after a little while from 2 naps to 1 nap. And that's the topic that we'll discuss today. I'm the mom of 2 older teenagers, and I have been working with expecting and new families in the greater Boston area and nationally now for the past 22 years. And with me today, as most Tuesdays at 12 noon, is my friend and colleague Meg Casano. And Megan is also a registered nurse and is our IsisParenting sleep team co-leader. And she's our senior sleep consultant and helps each week with these free webinars to provide information to people around the country and around the globe. And we're really excited that so many people are accessing the recorded webinars. So please do continue to spread the word when you find them helpful. Tell your moms groups, tell people online, please tell your pediatricians, and so on. So without further ado, I know everybody wants to talk about naps, and we'll move right into that topic. I did just want to remind you that we're kind of starting this topic based on some assumptions that you know some of the basic information that are the hallmark of our sleep support program here. So we talk a lot about the science of infant-toddler sleep, about regulating sleep cycles in terms of circadian rhythm, using lightness and dark, room environment. If you need to play catch-up in any way, there's many sleep resources for you on the same page that brought you here today. So we usually recommend people start with the science of infant-toddler sleep, which is an hour-long presentation that encompasses a great deal of information, and then watch the age and stage appropriate sleep and nap patterns webinar for your specific child's age group. And then based on what scenarios you're working with, do you need to begin to reduce gently night feedings? Are you struggling with helping your baby learn how to fall asleep on his or her own? Do you have a younger baby and you're struggling with naps? That would be problem solving 6 weeks to 4 months. If you have an older baby and you're trying to get them to sleep in a crib instead of on your lap, then we have the helping babies nap in the crib, and so on. Trading down sleep associations is probably one of our most popular recorded webinars, and that is a term that we use to talk a little bit about how to substitute in a very slow, gradual, gentle way one type of sleep association, such as nursing or feeding or holding or rocking to sleep. And then, of course, you try to put the baby down and they struggle, wake up, and you have to start all over again. And then repeat that in the middle of the night at 2 and 4 and 5 and 6 a.m. Because the child has a sleep association with, for example, bottle feeding and really needs that in order to fall back asleep. So trading down sleep associations is a great webinar to watch to gradually learn how to help your baby learn to fall asleep on his or her own, which will help when the baby wakes up in the middle of the night, as we all do numerous times, that they can hang out and hopefully fall back asleep on their own without needing, first of all, food, and then later on your intervention. So on that note, I think I will turn the microphone over to Meg and let her finish her own introductions and begin today's topic.
Thanks, Nancy. Yeah, the only thing I wanted to add was just that those of you who know me know I have 4 little girls. My oldest is 6.5. Oh, there they are. My baby just turned 1. And so I'm going to be going through a nap transition myself before too long. If you're going through something now, I know how to navigate it, but it doesn't mean I won't still have some dicey days too. So I'm with you. All right, here we go. When you are transitioning, you want to keep in mind that your baby's daytime naps are all about homeostatic pressure. Okay, this is one of those things Nancy said, go back, listen to some of the basics that we've presented before. Homeostatic pressure is sleep pressure. How tired is your baby? And so, when your baby's a little teeny newborn, Your baby can't and shouldn't withstand great amounts of sleep pressure. Your baby's napping all the time, multiple naps all day. As your baby gets older, we're looking for naps to consolidate. Your baby can withstand longer periods of wakefulness between the naps. And so that's when you start to see the nap schedule change a little bit. And generally, between 6 to 9 months is what, actually, let me back up for a second. As you get to the 5 to 6 month mark, that's when you start to see your baby having more of a regular, we look for a more mature 3 nap a day pattern. As those naps improve and consolidate, whether you need to do a little work on naps at that time, and then as your baby gets to the 6 to 9 month range, that's typically when 3 naps drop down to 2. As you move more to the 12 to 15 month range, that's when we look for 2 naps to drop down to 1. Remember that transition periods can take time. If your baby's on the young end, like say a 12-month-old transitioning from 2 naps to 1, it might take several weeks, and by several I mean it could take 6 weeks for your baby to get used to this pattern, to become accustomed to the longer stretches of wakefulness, and to really settle into a nice groove. For some babies, it takes even longer for that single midday nap to really stretch out and become nice and restorative. If your baby's on the older side, 15 months, some babies are even 18 months or older when they transition to just 1 nap. They might sail through the transition in just, several days. Okay, so let's talk first about the transition from 3 naps to 2. And I just sort of did a question list. These are really common questions that we get asked. So I'm going to just run through them and hopefully cover all of your questions. How do I know when it's time? Well, if your baby is between 6 and 9 months, and your baby is starting to get adequate sleep in nap 1 and nap 2, then you might start to think about dropping nap 3. By adequate sleep, jumping down to the last question here, what does that mean? Generally, your baby is going to be getting about 3 hours of daytime sleep. Some babies never get 3 hours of daytime sleep. They might get less, like 2.5 or so. Some babies are getting a lot less than that, but hopefully we're keeping them in the close to that 3 hour mark. And so if your baby's having a nice morning nap and a nice midday nap, then if your baby continues to have that 3rd nap, remember, because of sleep pressure and your baby withstanding longer stretches of wakefulness, what starts to happen is your bedtime starts to delay and push later. Now, for some families, that works really well. They like to have a bit of a later bedtime and keep these naps spaced out during the day because maybe working family, or they've got a lot of stuff going on in the afternoon or evening. And so some families try to hang on to 3 naps as long as they can. For other families, they like the bedtime to drift earlier and have a longer night. So the short answer really is, when nap 1 and nap 2 are providing your baby with adequate sleep, then you can think about dropping nap 3. So the answer to that question is yes, nap 3 is the one that goes. How do you do it in this case for the little baby, 6 to 9 months? If you're home, you stop offering the 3rd nap. You wouldn't go into the room or the nursery. Maybe if you had been wearing your baby or trying to, jumping through a lot of hoops and doing a lot of soothing at the end of the day to try to get them to take that 3rd nap, which can sometimes be really elusive, then you stop trying to do that too, and you just sort of enjoy your longer afternoon. And then your bedtime will drift earlier. We're going to talk about that too. What's going to happen is your 1st and 2nd nap are going to stretch out a little bit more. So, with the youngest babies, generally there's about 2 hours of wakefulness in the morning before the 1st nap. As babies get a little older, 8, 9, 11, 12 months, your baby might need to stay awake more like 2.5 or even 3 hours in the morning before taking that 1st nap now. And then it might be another 2.5 to 3 hours before the 2nd nap. So instead of having your 3 naps closer together, your 2 naps space out just a little bit. So you end up with a morning nap and an early afternoon nap. and then your longest stretch of wakefulness of the, or your longest stretch of wakefulness of the day happens at the end of the day. How long does this transition take? Again, it could be a few days, it could be several weeks. And you're looking for your baby to continue to get about 3 hours of daytime sleep. If your baby is taking 3 naps a day and getting a lot more than that, I work with families whose babies sometimes are taking 4.5, even 5 hours of daytime sleep as a 6 to 9 month old. Those babies are generally having very short nights of sleep. So it's not just the amount of sleep your baby's getting, it's the dispersal as well. And if your baby is a short napper during the day, your baby will probably have a longer night. If your baby's a long napper during the day, your baby will have a shorter night. When you transition from 2 naps to 1, this is generally happening between the 12 and 15 month mark. What you tend to see is, hey, when I put my baby down in the crib in the morning, she's rolling around, she's not falling asleep, or maybe it takes you 45 minutes to fall asleep, and then she does fall asleep, but now it's so late that we're running out of time to get a second nap in at the end of the day. So it's sort of like a domino. You're always kind of looking ahead. If my morning nap is happening late and it pushes afternoon nap time too late, then it's going to push bedtime late. So, you might see that scenario. You might see your baby continue to fall asleep great for morning nap time, but then you're noticing that you are really hard you're going to end up with one single midday or to early afternoon nap. And so you're going to let the morning nap go, but in a way, you're almost going to merge the 2 naps together at first. You are going to start napping your baby just once in the middle of the day, but your baby's probably not going to be able to make it all the way to, like a very typical nap time is about 12:30, 1 o'clock. At first, your 14-month-old might not be able to make it all the way there. So you might start napping your baby at, say, 11 o'clock in the morning. And then she may take a nice long nap for you. But even if she takes a good nap and she wakes up at, say, 1 or 1:30, that's still a long way to go until bedtime. And so over the course of a few weeks, you're going to slowly shift that single nap more into true middle of your day. But as you're doing this, you might notice your baby taking some little cat naps on the outskirts. So, for example, maybe your baby takes a little cat nap on the way to preschool drop-off in the morning, just a mini, a mini power nap, and that sustains her to your new, now real midday nap time that you're going to start establishing. Or maybe you have the sort of early nap, like say 11 to 1 or 11 to 2. And then you're running an errand in the late afternoon at 5 o'clock and your baby dozes in the car, or you take a walk and your baby takes a power nap and she makes it through to her bedtime. Those kinds of scenarios are okay. It's normal that this happens during the transition time. You're going to see those little cat naps go away. And you should see those cat naps go away, because if your 18-month-old cat naps for 10 minutes in the car in the morning, well, you know what could then happen to your real nap. It might make it really hard for your much older baby to then fall asleep. So look for those cat naps that may be happening in the beginning to go away. Start to nap your baby once in the middle of the day, probably late morning time for most babies, and then push it slowly to the middle of the day. As far as the timing for the single midday nap, you want it kind of balanced. In other words, you want your baby to have a similar stretch of morning wakefulness to build up the sleep pressure before the nap. And then you want your baby to have, roughly similar afternoon stretch of wakefulness to, again, rebuild that sleep pressure, have time to play, have afternoon light exposure before going to bed at night. So, a really common schedule becomes for older babies about a 5 to 5.5 or even 6 hour morning with a 2 to 3 hour nap in the middle of the day, and then about a 5 or so afternoon period of wakefulness, and then an 11-hour night. Now, you would adjust this. Some babies would do a 12-hour night. Some babies will consistently take a 3-hour nap. So The point is just that your nap is roughly middle of the day. You're not having, an extended long morning of wakefulness and then a really short afternoon of wakefulness. This transition, again, can take a few days to a few weeks, depending on how old your baby is. And as for how much day sleep, for a baby taking 2 or 3 naps a day, as a 6 to 12 month old, we are still seeing about 3 hours of daytime sleep. But at age 2, we're generally seeing about 2 hours of daytime sleep. So somewhere in between that 1 to 2 year mark, the day sleep totals do drop from about 3 hours down to about 2 hours. Okay, so an important note here, whenever you are transitioning from 3 naps to 2 or 2 naps to 1, bedtime will shift earlier after the transition. This is pretty widely known information, but ISIS, we always give you the little extras. So the thing to remember is before you make a nap transition as your baby's getting ready, your bedtime might actually temporarily shift later. So let me explain this in a different way. Remember, this is all about sleep pressure. If your 15-month-old is still taking really beautiful naps, a nice morning nap, and then about 3 hours later, a nice afternoon nap, your baby might be staying up later now than she ever has and still getting a really nice night of sleep and being really, really well rested. That's actually normal. But then when you go to merge the 2 naps and transition to just a single nap a day, then your baby's bedtime will actually shift earlier again. It's the same thing with that 3 nap scenario. If your baby's taking 2 nice naps, morning nap, midday nap, and then getting a single sleep cycle third afternoon nap, like a 45-minute afternoon nap as a 9-month-old, you still have a little while to go before your bedtime. And so you may end up temporarily with a later bedtime and a shorter night's sleep, but still with a well-rested baby. So I only say this because it's easy to, especially when you're sort of on, you have a 4-month-old and a 5-month-old who really can't withstand great amounts of sleep pressure. You do tend to, your baby might be going to bed early, and, it's really tempting to sort of stay on that newborn pattern. But as the naps stretch out, as they improve, and your baby gets older, as you're approaching that transition age, you may actually need a bit of a later bedtime so that your baby can continue to fall asleep quickly and easily at bedtime. Yeah. It's just so that your baby can continue to fall asleep quickly and easily at bedtime.
Meg, I think we'll see this in the future slides as we start to look at some sleep plots. But in the chat room, we're talking a little bit about bedtime sabotage from the late afternoon or early evening cat nap, maybe with some younger babies. And I mentioned briefly that as a child gets
Yeah, that's right. Mhm. Right. So for the young babies, they do need that third cat nap so that they can make it to their bedtime because they can't withstand that long afternoon of wakefulness. But when your baby passes the age, now I see Sarah Faith saying, "Oh, the dreaded 5:30 snooze."
Yeah.
So Sarah's baby might be old enough now that if he or she naps at 5, then she has trouble getting him down to bed. So her baby might be ready to transition down to just 2 naps a day. And when your baby has the 2 naps a day, yes, your afternoon stretch of wakefulness becomes your longest of the day. It may bump up to even 4 hours of wakefulness before bedtime. Does that help? Yeah, we'll see. We will see that. We'll see. We'll see that.
Yes, it helps because I think something that you've mentioned before, which is that people do a little bit get stuck in that newborn mindset that we emphasize for younger babies.
That's right. That's right. I will say, don't take this and run with it. Erin likes to say capacity for staying awake does not equal ideal time to be awake. So it's not just that how long your child can physically stay awake. You still are looking at how long should your child be awake. But that's why when you drop the third nap, you tend to see nap one and nap two spaced out a little bit more too. Okay, so we're going to show you the sleep plots, which are very cool. Just to remind you how to read them, you can see here that if you look on the bottom, oh yeah, on the bottom here, this is going to be baby's morning wake up time, and this baby at 6 a.m. This white block here is a night wake up. Okay, then baby's awake in the morning, has a morning nap. The shaded in blocks are for sleep. Then baby is awake again. Then baby has a nap. Then baby is awake again before bedtime. So you've got bedtime here on the right. You've got morning wake time here on the left. For those of you who've seen this, you know this is really, really cool. And for those of you who haven't, we love this. This you see, I think, only at ISIS. So you guys are lucky to be seeing this. We used to just use this in our classes. All right, so what you have up here, this is newborn sleep. Remember this? Very normally disorganized and scattered, and you are exhausted. And then as the circadian rhythm starts to develop and emerge, you get the first inklings, the first consolidations and stretches of long sleep, which happen in the first third of the night. Right here, start to get a regular bedtime. This is around the 10-week to 3-month mark or so. And then as you get closer to about the 4-month mark, you start to get a more regular morning wake time. And you start to see between 4 and 6 months the emergence of more mature napping patterns, these 3 naps a day. Okay, so this baby settles into nice morning wake, nap 1, nap 2, nap 3, and nice regular bedtime. If you, for those people who do a sleep consult, you get these graphs to track your baby's sleep, and it gets very addicting. You get these nice, beautiful columns of regularity, which you want to see for the circadian rhythm. And so now you see this baby transition, the third nap dropped, and you see very clearly how the bedtime moved earlier. And then it happens again over here. I think we'll show you this more specifically. Yep, so here we go around the 9th month. Nap transition, bedtime moves earlier. This baby still, remember those little cat nap snoozes that you might see popping up from time to time, totally normal. This baby on days he had the cat nap, see, pushed his bedtime a little bit, also normal. Love these are so cool. Okay, and then here baby transitioned from 2 naps to 1. It's a little dicey and irregular for several days. Very definitely the switch to the earlier bedtime. And so this is where I say too, for some families who've got long working days, and that evening hour might be the time where they get to see their baby. Those families might want to try to hang on to that third nap as long as they can to keep their bedtime a little bit later. As long as baby's well rested during the day, that can work fine. Okay, so hopefully you got some tips on transitioning from 3 naps to 2. You're dropping the third nap. Last stretch of wakefulness becomes the longest and bedtime shifts earlier. The 2 naps start to space out a bit. When you're dropping from nap 2 to 1, you sort of merge the 2 naps together. Look for midday nap, roughly consistent stretches of wakefulness in the morning, in the afternoon, and bedtime again moves earlier. Common questions that we frequently see in a sleep consult, things that we cover on a regular basis, are talking about daycare. Lots of daycare transitions. Lots of daycares try to transition babies early, or babies nap great at daycare or poorly at daycare, not at home. So sort of juggling those kinds of scenarios. Baby transitioning to 1 nap, but then the nap is kind of crummy and not really adequate for the day, and what to do about that, how to extend nap duration. Juggling it with school pickups and drop-offs, which is near and dear to my own heart with all of my children. And, baby transitioning to 2 naps, and now as your bedtime's constantly shifting, how are you fitting this in with your work life, kids, schedule balance too? And as I sort of touched on too, the options for those who would like their baby to be able to stay up later in the evening. Okay, Nancy, were there any questions you wanted me to come back to?
Well, I keep meaning to add this to the website because, as you know, we get a lot of sleep consult questions that are specifically about napping. And sometimes people, when they call for a consult, will say, oh, I don't really know if I need a consult or if it needs to be a full consult because my baby is sleeping okay at night. I'm just struggling with naps. Can you talk a little bit about the benefit of a sleep consult to help with naps? Or to really, kind of help parents. Maybe you could explain a little bit about shifting to the right, shifting to the left,
I actually talked to a
particularly with
mom
daylight
last night who
savings
was
so close
so
behind us,
knowledgeable
how to help
about,
people.
I mean, she just read so much and and she needed to spend the bulk of our conversation talking about naps, which we did. But then we also had a nice amount of time to talk about what's coming next in terms of development and changes. We talked about daylight savings time. So now she's going to have a head start. We even talked about fall daylight savings time. She's going to have a head start on, just like you said, Nancy, as things come along. And even summertime. Some families like their babies to move to a little later schedule for the summertime, how to shift your circadian rhythm using light and dark exposure. For naps, we talk about scheduling, and we talk a lot about the environment. We talk about how to learn to initiate naps, how to extend nap sleep. So there's definitely always a lot to talk about based on people's individual, their what's your house like, what's your setup like, what's your schedule like. Always a lot to cover. Are you there, Nancy? Question here. Let's see. Allison's asking, can an LO sleep too much? I'm probably not up on my chat lingo. What's an LO? Guys, type in and tell me. My 19-month sleep 8 p to 7:30, takes 2-hour nap in the late morning. Oh, little one. Thanks. See, my chat room lingo. 2.5, so 3.5 hours a day. Okay. Like to drop a second nap, but it gets too cranky. Yeah, Allison, you sound like this is totally appropriate age, 19 months. The 2.5, wow, he's getting a ton of sleep. He's a really nice, is the night sleep well consolidated? I'm assuming that it is. So, the answer is start to slide that nap midday. And what you're going to do, now he's already having a long night, 8 p.m. to 7:30 a.m., but you may even see, if he's a great sleeper, you may even see that bump up to a 12-hour night. So if you shift the bedtime backwards to more like 7:30 to 7:30 with a 2-hour nap in the middle of the day. Remember, it's going to take, now you said he gets cranky in the afternoon. That's learning to withstand that increased sleep pressure. So if you run an errand and he takes a little power nap to just sort of take the edge off to make it to bedtime, that's fine. If you are having a late nap, like an hour-long nap from 5 to 6, I'm actually surprised at 19 months that he would be able to fall asleep so quickly and easily at 8 p.m. and to have the sleep pressure to sustain him all the way through 11 and a half hours. So I guess I'd be curious if you were having any wake ups in the overnight, especially early in the morning, like 5 a.m. or so, and if that was being remedied in some way with feeding or something. because that is a lot of sleep in the late afternoon. So, yeah, I would say slide that nap midday, maybe bring the bedtime about a half an hour early, and then give it at least several days, if not a couple weeks, to settle in. Nancy? Hi. Okay. Yep.
Trying my microphone again. I think it's working now. Yeah. Okay, here's a question from a mom who says that her 4-month-old is transitioning back to childcare, and she's working with a childcare provider to try to have a better sleep
Yes.
environment because they were expecting this baby to sleep in the busy
Yeah,
room with full
that's really
light and
good.
so on. But at any rate, her question is the baby is only 4 months old,
Yeah, a
and
lot of times they
he
do.
seems to
Yeah, a lot of
really
times they
just
do
be
until
getting
they hit
two
the
naps at
toddler room, and then when
childcare.
everyone's on the same
And
schedule,
is
maybe
it
more in the
important that he
older
get 3 naps?
toddler rooms, then it tends to improve. But um, yeah, I mean, more sleep is always good. I guess my question would be, how long are the naps that this little 4 month old is getting? If they're little mini single sleep cycle naps, like 30 minutes, yeah, I would probably, and it's, a 7 or 8 hour day at daycare. I would try to see if they can sneak another one in. 4 months, you're right on the border of your baby still needing to nap every 60 to 120 minutes, depending on the length of the previous nap. You're not yet to the 5.5 to 6 month mark where your baby can stay awake for 2 to 3 hours in between naps. So, I think based on what you're describing for now, at least for a few more weeks, it may be beneficial. And then on the weekend, yeah, do what you can. Keep the naps as regular as you can. It might be helpful to track things a little bit on the weekend so you have some information to share with your daycare, so they can actually see, um, the timing that you're achieving on the weekend. She has, there's a daycare webinar too that this mom might find helpful in terms of the environment. Oh, okay. Oh, good. Okay, good. Good.
Yes, she says she's watched it several times. This is one of our frequent flyers, and has made some suggestions in terms of the environment already there. So that's very helpful. Okay, I think we're about out of time. There are some questions from newcomers about the sleep consults. These are done by phone. We do them all over the country, and in fact, internationally as well. You can click this live link right here, or you can go to our website and learn a little bit more about the sleep consult process. And it is, oh, there's a great, I think there's about 45 reviews up there now too, which is really nice to read about other parents' experiences. Next week we have good news for you. Next week we're going to do all Q&A. So instead of having a little mini class on a particular topic, we're going to take your questions for the entire 30 minutes. We haven't done that for a long time. I think not since before the winter holidays was our last pure Q&A session. Those of you who are, I was going to say those of you who are breastfeeding and then tell you about the breastfeeding webinar on Thursday, but instead I think I will say those of you who have babies who poop, I would like you to know about the webinar on Thursday, because whether your baby is breastfed or formula fed or a combination of both, I think the topic will be of great interest to you. We're going to talk about baby poop from meconium through table food. So prizes that show up in the diaper. So that will be this Thursday at 12 noon, and that is the Poop Talk webinar. So please join me for that. That's part of the breastfeeding webinar series, but again, If you are not breastfeeding, you are absolutely welcome and will find it of great interest. What else can I tell you? Sign up for our weekly newsletters. If you don't receive those already, please do sign up. And then I'm looking back in the, oh, I don't have it here anymore. Please go on to that page that I linked at the beginning of the chat. I can put the link up here and write a little review for us. Yes, poop is a topic near and dear